All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Sunday Futures. We are here once again on a Sunday afternoon. It is 7:48 Eastern Standard Time. And, we've got the second week of December starting in about basically 24 hours. First week of December was pretty exciting. We had a lot of stuff happen this week. We're going to do a little bit of a recap of what we saw this week in terms of the markets. Had a bunch of different people talk this week. That was really interesting, exciting. Obviously, markets did very well in terms of the S&P, Dow Jones, NASDAQ. Small caps lagged a little bit, but big tech did really well. And then we'll be previewing what I'm expecting for next week. Now, this week is going to be very, very important. Why? Because we get CPI and PPI. We get inflation data. This inflation data is going to be very, very important in the context of if we're going to get a rate cut. I think regardless of the inflation data, unless it really surprises to the upside, we're going to get a rate cut. And some stuff happened this week that kind of only confirmed that we're going to get a rate cut in the context of the jobs data that we got on Friday and in the context of what Jerome Powell said at the NYT Dealbook conference back on Wednesday. I'm looking at the target rate probabilities right now. I just pulled this up. It was 75% to my understanding on Thursday. Right now, it's 85% for a rate cut, 15% to not get a rate cut. So something dramatic would have to happen in terms of the actual data from inflation, CPI, PPI this week for this number to go the opposite direction. So we're going to talk about that, talk about some macro stuff, obviously talk about Bitcoin. We're back at 100,000 and we're going to talk about Palantir because we had some new CARP clips over the weekend speaking at RNDF. And someone who has over 200 million followers shared one of those clips 20 minutes ago. And that video now is surpassing over 5 million views because that video is based in the words of Mr. Elon Musk, who just shared Alice Carp to his 200 million followers. So pretty exciting stuff. Got a lot to talk about, a lot to get into. Let's get into it. And then we got, in 10 minutes, we got the overnight markets opening on Robinhood. Futures right now are relatively flat. Nothing too crazy from futures. So I'll show you futures real quick. But in the next 10 minutes, we are going to see what Robinhood opens up like. And then we'll kind of see where things are going from there. So there are futures. Nothing too crazy. Basically flat. Bitcoin's up. VIX is up a little bit. Small caps, S&P 500, Dow Jones, and the NASDAQ are basically flat on the day. All right, let's get started. Nolan, what's up? Alex, what's up? What's up? Thank you, everybody, for being here. Jude, Quarantine Quartet. Sense says Amit rocking that Mayo white sweater. I like this sweater. Kentucky. I like this one. I've worn this one a lot. I enjoy the blue and white combo. That's a nice one. Ori, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate it. Waiting for you at 2:46 a.m. I appreciate it, Ori. I believe you're in Israel, right, Ori? Time in Israel. Yeah, 2:51 in Israel. So thank you for joining all the way from Israel. Appreciate it. William, Bay Ray, what's up? Midwest, Rafi, Blake Anderson, Sean, Gene, Crowd Console, Dragos, Inked Up, Laura, Lisa, Stewart. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. We got a lot to discuss, a lot to talk about. Brendan, Raul, what's up? What's up? Round Mound, AR, B Storm, TG, Ryan, Michael, Cole, Sean, Enigma. I love that word, Enigma. It means puzzle for those that don't know. Enigmatic. Really good word. I like that word. Raul, what's up? Arthur, what's up? Sean. All right, let's get into it. Stacy, what's up? Diane, hello. All right. First thing before we get started, because we do have a lot of stuff to talk about today, is I have an announcement. And some of you guys have seen this announcement. I teased this announcement since last night, and I've been having fun teasing it because it's been a fun one. So basically last night at 10:23 p.m., I said, hey guys, at 2 p.m., I will have a special announcement regarding Robinhood, aka today. And the hint was it's time. I think one person got it out of all the comments. For some reason, everyone thought I was going to be disclosing some product information. And I'm like, guys, like I can't, like I don't work at the company. I can't literally disclose anything, but I don't know anything. And so I can't, especially not on a Sunday. Like that's not how it's going to work. So that was the first guess, which that was just never going to happen. And number two, people thought I was going to work for Robinhood. Which also, every time someone says, oh, are you going to work for Palantir or work for Robinhood? I'm like, no, because if I did, I couldn't talk about them. Like if I work for a corporation, I don't have the independence to talk about the stock, obviously, or anything else that I want to talk about, because then you're working for a company, right? So that's just not, from my understanding, that is not my goal. I want to keep doing what I'm doing. So it wasn't about working for them. It wasn't about some product announcement that I would be doing on a Sunday, because that wouldn't happen. Teasing it a little bit more right here. I bet he's thinking about other woman. What is Amit going to post that hood at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time? And then ultimately we came up with the announcement, ladies and gentlemen, introducing Robinhood Weekly. Mondays, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. A lot of people have been waiting for this to happen after the Investor Day. I kind of came up with this on Saturday. I just randomly thought about it. I was like, wait a second. There is so much news happening. There was so much excitement. How could I not culminate all of that into a podcast? I mean, I talk about Robinhood every day on the Market Open, but a dedicated destination is kind of the hallmark of a community. And Palantir Weekly has been able to do that for Palantir. SoFi Weekly obviously has done it for SoFi. I think it's time for Robinhood Weekly. So Tanner and Roy will be joining me every single Monday at 9:30 p.m. I think Robinhood has clearly positioned themselves as one of the leaders in the world of finance. They have new verticals, yearly events, multiple acquisitions, new geographies to expand, new layers of execution. We're going to have guests, get different perspectives, debates, industry news, all that good stuff every single Monday. Tomorrow night, 9:30 p.m. will be our first episode, Robinhood's first ever Investor Day. For those that aren't interested in Robinhood, you don't have to watch. For those that are interested but don't have a position yet, I think it'll be a good podcast over the years to help you get a better understanding of the company. I just think, based on what I saw at Investor Day, and I'm still going through their slide deck, which is 140 pages, there is not only enough news to discuss every week, but there is such an exciting story that's developing, and I think it deserves its own dedicated podcast. So there we go. Robinhood Weekly every single Monday. It is going to be very exciting, and hopefully you guys enjoy as well. All right, so that's what we're going to be having on Mondays. That was a big announcement. We'll talk more about Robinhood later. Let's get into Palantir because we've got a lot of stuff to talk about when it comes to Palantir. So two things I want to show off before we get into it. Palantir's Alex Karp was in the was at RNDF, which is this conference every single month or every single year in December. And here's some clips of what he had to say. So here's the first thing Karp had to say, speaking about the legitimacy crisis in America, along with why he thinks Doge is a good idea. And then we'll go to the clip when Elon, the clip that Elon shared from this weekend as well.
Palantir, I think, is the largest by market cap defense startup in the world. And many of the people in this room are former Palantirians. We just did an announcement with Andrew, and then we have Doug Philippone. And basically, your future is powered by us. Maybe not directly, but we were the most hated, most pariah, most disliked. We used to do meetings in the backyard of the backyard of the backyard because you couldn't be seen with Palantir. And the reason I'm mentioning this is not just because I'm proud we succeeded, and quite frankly, the people hated and us didn't, which makes me happy, but is that when you're dealing with skeptics, what we have in this country is a legitimation crisis. There is no one in this country, no expert, that where they say something and the American people are going to say, I 100% believe that's true because you said it. We didn't have that in the 50s. In the 50s, there was a famous professor, Ken Arrow. If he said you were smart, you got tenure. Because who would know better than Ken Arrow? And this was in every area. We do not have that in any area. So this is why I think the Doge is a crucial stuff. We have to measure what is it being spent on, what is the output. Is the input less than the output? And then you have to explain what is that output. The only thing that will cure a legitimacy crisis is measurement. And that's where we are in this country. And anything else is a platitude because honestly, and I tell this with great respect to experts, no one's listening. Everyone's thinking you have an agenda. Everyone thinks you're working back from who you like. My favorite example of this are analysts on Wall Street. The whole methodology they have is just a way of telling you if they like you. So what would I do in any of these cases? This is what we're spending. This is the outcome. And in a legitimation crisis, you got about 6 months. And this is true for everything in our country, whether it's Ukraine, Israel, spending, lethal systems, healthcare. We need to prove there is no one who can stand up. We don't have Ronald Reagan now.
This was Karp when he was asked about the money that we're spending in Ukraine and the reasoning for the money. And essentially he was like, look, it's not that Americans don't want to spend money. It's about the way that we spend that money and how the money ultimately is allocated, which goes back to Doge. So he said this on the Fox Business interview a couple of days ago as well, that he thinks Elon Musk is the right person for Doge. He's kind of reinforcing that argument right now, that if there's a legitimacy crisis in America, meaning people don't trust institutions, Well, the only way to gain legitimacy is by people gaining trust. And to gain trust, you have to have an affective understanding of the metrics that an institution uses, aka the inputs of money and the outputs of ROI for the country. And in this case, we don't have an effective measurement of that, but that's something that Doge is trying to solve. Here is the video that Elon shared, and Elon said CARP was based in these 2-minute clip from that same talk as well.
Americans are the most loving, God-fearing, fair, least discriminatory people on the planet. And they want to know that if you're waking up and thinking about harming American citizens, or if American citizens are taken hostage and kept in dungeons, or if you're a foreign power sending fentanyl to poison our people, something really bad is going to happen to you and your friends and your cousins and your bank account and your mistress and whoever was involved. And you know, when Americans are spending $1 trillion on defense, what I want and what I think my peers want is, why are these people keeping our citizens hostage, torturing our people, attacking our allies, maligning us in what was once called the United Nations, basically a discriminatory institution against anything good? We need to stand up, and those people need to be scared. And that's why this conference is so important, because we have the best products in the world, and we cannot have parity. Our adversaries do not have our moral compunction. If it's even, they will take advantage of our niceness, kindness, our desire to be at home in Nebraska or New Hampshire or wherever we live in our peaceful environments. And they need to wake up scared and go to bed scared. And if you give that to the American people will go back and say, and honestly, probably shouldn't say this is why I thought the Democrats were going to lose the election, why they did, because people want to live in peace. They want to go home. They do not want to hear your woke pagan ideology. They want to know they're safe. And safe means that the other person is scared. That's how you make someone safe. And the average American person understands this. Unfortunately, many of the intellectually captured institutions, funneled and intellectually owned by the Berkeley faculty, do not. And that's what they want, but sure as hell what I want. And that's what Palantir and all the people in this room, I hope, we're here to serve the American people. And my version of service is the soldiers are happier, the enemies are scared, and Americans go back to enjoying the fact that we're the only one with a real tech scene in this country, and we're going to win everything. That's how I see it.
So that was shared by Mr. Elon Musk. It has 8.9 million views in about 2 hours. The Elon pump is a different type of pump. I've gotten my post shared by Elon before. It was like 54 million views in a day. It is a different level of pump. But the exposure of that 2-minute message, even if half of those 8.9 million people listen to the whole thing, that's special. And you get to do that when you have mic drop moments, because you actually say something in a way that people care about, and you know how to communicate. So we'll get back to that in a second. Robinhood just opened up in the overnight markets. Palantir is at 78.72, folks. We just hit 79 for a second. We were up 3% on the Robinhood overnight markets. So there you go. I didn't see 80. I saw 79, but we're at 78.61. Robinhood is at 41.45. Bitcoin's taking a little bit of a tank right here. It's recovering. It was just at 101. Now it's down to 99.7. But it was at like 99.4, but it's now up right here. Tesla, S&P's at 607. Dow Jones at 447. IWM at 239. Tesla is, are we above 400? Whoa, 399. Tesla's going to have a 4 in front of it very soon. Volume is 25,000. Volume on Palantir, 7850, is 6,000. So Palantir, definitely less volume. Let's check some others. NVIDIA is at 142. NVIDIA slightly down. SoFi is at 1617. SoFi's up. SoFi was struggling over the past couple of days in that 1550 range, particularly because one of their oldest investors sold. I didn't think it was that big of a deal, but SoFi right here back into the 16s. Eli Lilly's at 826. You have Coinbase at 339. MSTR, let's take a look at them real quick. MSTR is at 394. MSTR kind of staying in this 350 to 400 range. I know that's a large range, but that's where it's kind of been. Amazon at 226, all-time highs. Amazon broke out on Friday. Apple at 242, Microsoft at 443, Netflix 934, Disney 116, Starbucks 100, Alibaba 86, Alibaba Bank of America 4678, Snapchat 1254, Ford $10.48. Nothing too crazy as the overnight markets open. It'll take probably a little bit of time to get some more volume in and see if we have anything crazy. And also futures weren't that crazy either. So it makes sense that the overnight markets are not wild, but we do have Palantir and Tesla up a respective 2.5 to 3% in the overnight markets. Palantir right here at $78.07. And then Tesla, it looks like it wants 400, folks. It really does. 399.4. It looks like it wants $400. Costco is $995. SMCI, which has had an incredible run the past couple of days. Wow. Here's a big one. I did not see this one. 13% on SMCI in the overnight markets. The reason they pumped on Friday after hours is because they got an extension by the NASDAQ to file their forms by February 25th. So the market interpreted that as pretty bullish. Overnight volume is 60,000 shares on SMCI. That's up by 13%. TSM in the overnight markets is up about 0.24% at 203. And then ASML doesn't trade overnight, I think. Yeah, it doesn't trade overnight. That one is at 700 from Friday, 708. Okay, there we go. So let's get back into Palantir and we'll keep discussing from there, but Palantir currently up in the overnight market. So overall, my thoughts on those two clips. I think Karp crushed it. And this is kind of what I wrote after I read or after I saw what he said in the actual event. So this is what I wrote right here. And then I want to show you guys some analysis as well on the options market for Palantir. So I think Karp crushed it at RNDF. It is so important to have a CEO who can actually communicate a big idea in a way that is simple enough for anyone to understand. How do you inspire the masses? How do you convince customers to change how they've been doing things historically? How do you get analysts to see the larger opportunity? How do you get people with regular 9-to-5s, like most of us, to put their hard-earned money and invest in your stock when it's down 80% 2 years ago? And how do you get people to buy that same company when it's 10 times more valuable? How do you make people feel you already know where the world is going before it gets there? You need to have such instinctive and charming communication skills to make the world want to listen. I mean, Elon's not sharing that because he's best friends with Karp. I think they're good friends. I don't think they're like BFFs or anything. Elon's sharing that because he believes in the message. How do you communicate things in a way to get someone with 200 million followers to share your post? You have to be a good communicator. And I think if anything, Karp proved that he is a phenomenal communicator. I mean, we've already known that, but at this event, he definitely crushed it by showing how well he is at communication. Now, the options market for Palantir is also getting pretty juiced up. I took a look at the $80 call option, which I just haven't looked at in the past couple of days. I mean, I didn't really think there was that much activity there, but lo and behold, 25,000 call options are open on the $80 call expiring 12/20. The 115 call, I think, just opened up on Friday. So we're going to get data on that tomorrow in terms of how many people are buying that $115 call. But I mean, look, we're at 78. So we're kind of getting close to getting in the money on that. We do have about 2 more weeks left until that contract expires. So the fact that 25,000 people, probably when Palantir was at 65, because I don't think that open interest happened overnight, started buying that $80 call, it goes to show you that option traders are really bullish on Palantir. Now, one other thing I want to show you guys, and then we'll move on from Palantir. Well, 2 things. Actually, let me show you 2 things. First is this clip, because I said there's one more clip I do want to show you guys. Sorry if the volume is a little low, but this is what Karp had to say about AI in the United States. And then I want to talk a little bit about the stock and another argument I came up with today to kind of explain this $35 to $75 run. So here's Karp talking about AI in the United States.
I would say one thing that gets somewhat lost in these results is America is in the very beginning of a revolution that we own, the AI revolution. And we own it. It should basically be called the US AI revolution. Every single relevant company in the world is in this country. The second tier of those companies are in this country. The JV of these companies are in this country. There is no other place to do technology really at scale besides America right now. And Europe is basically decided to regulate its basically anemic and non-existent tech scene out of production. All those people want to come to America. The American tech community is booming. And so, behind all of this is a macro backdrop of, This is actually a revolution. It's very hard to see now because it's kind of the beginning innings, and a lot of these large language models incorrectly applied are just science projects. But if you have the right layer to implement them, you can actually transform your business in days. And this is happening across America. And it's not happening anywhere else. It's not happening in Europe. No one's who wants to build a company in China or Russia. It's happening right here. And that macro trend is going to change everything that we do. Everyone in this room, every trend, war and peace, how we fight, where we fight, are humans fighting, are they not fighting? How do we code those decisions into code because it's too quick? How do we get ahead of our adversaries? And this is actually maybe the first time since we had the bomb and our adversaries before they stole it from us, where we have a massive structural advantage. And when you look at all of these things, like every single question, what the American people are reacting to is often what their space. But this is going to change every single thing.
So why is that important? Well, if we're investing in Palantir, this was on Saturday, Luke, so this happened just yesterday. Karp on the earnings calls has basically, for lack of a better word, shitted on Europe. And he says that Europe is being left behind on this AI revolution. If you're investing in Palantir, you're investing in the United States. I mean, you are investing in a business that is relatively not diversified outside of the United States. We have some business in the UK and a little bit in Asia with Japan, but fundamentally, you're betting on the United States government business and the United States commercial business. Now, I think over the next 10 years, that's going to change. But if Karp's out here saying basically the United States is winning and everyone else is losing, well, that means that Palantir's got to be winning in the United States. And the fact that he says instead of a AI revolution, it should be called a US AI revolution just also goes to show that there is a very strong culture in the United States around AI. Most of the money in the world that is coming into Palantir, people are asking, including myself, how do we justify a $174 billion market cap? There's not really a good numerical way to justify it other than the AI appetite in the United States of America, if it's not a fad, which I don't think it's a fad, is not going anywhere. And if it's not going anywhere, then there's a handful of companies that are going to benefit from all of that appetite. And we can see it with people deciding to buy Palantir at these elevated levels. Someone asked me today, hey, Amit, what are your thoughts on valuation? And I wrote this out. I don't think it's anything that new from what I've said before, but I do think it's something to pay attention to. So I'll read this and then we'll move on to some of the other news that we have going on. Valuation is stretched. That's pretty obvious, and I can't do the math to explain it. I would sound pretty stupid if I try to justify a 70 times price of sales. But at 35, I also thought the valuation was stretched, right? That was pushing a $70 billion market cap. Now we're at a $170 billion market cap. So I think in the name of humility, we also need to step back and ask why the stock went from 35 to 75. If we believe it wasn't retail, which I don't think retail had $100 billion to pump into Palantir, I just don't believe that, then money managers bought Palantir for a reason. They could all be wrong, or they could think this company is going to get to 40 to 50% growth, which is going to be incredibly elevated growth levels from where we are right now. Now, I know that because the market has pulled forward so much of the gains, even if we did 40% growth over the next decade, the real returns wouldn't necessarily be positive. It could be negative. But if they end up showing huge growth back into that 40, 50% range, the question is, if you're buying Palantir at $77, you're obviously buying it for the stock to be higher than 77. Will the growth multiple expand? Will the premium expand even more because people will want to be part of the story? And I think the answer is yes, because that's exactly what we saw on the run from 35 to 75. We accelerated growth from 22% to 30% in the midst of this $40 run. And although it didn't make numerical sense to buy it at 50 or 60, people, aka institutions, did because they didn't want to miss out. The LLMs don't matter. OpenAI at 150 billion. The more and more I see what Meta's doing with their with Llama as an open source LLM, the more I see what Grok is doing. I think OpenAI at 150 billion sounds ridiculous. I do think OpenAI will be one of the first companies to achieve AGI, and maybe that's worth $1 trillion. Maybe that's worth a lot more than 150 billion. But on paper, it makes no sense to dump a $150 billion valuation on a commoditized training process that is going to get better and better, but it's going to be the barrier entry to get into it is going to be slim, simply because of the data advantage that these companies all have, which is relatively the same, and because of the fact that they all have the same GPUs. So the market clearly believes operationalizing those LLMs are what matters, which brings you to none other than Palantir. Then you have the government business, new verticals they're entering, software uses cases for AI. The valuation, again, doesn't make sense from the numbers, but you can sense, and if you can't sense this, then you're just not paying attention, but you can sense why people want the stock. And usually that creates an expensive name if people are willing to pay a premium on something that you can't numerically justify. We've seen this with Tesla. We've seen this with NVIDIA. We've seen this with Amazon since 2014. And now we're seeing this with Palantir. I don't think that means it's a bubble. And I'll eat my words if we go down 50%, because then to me, that's the definition of a bubble. If that doesn't happen, then I don't think it's a bubble. I think it's just a very elevated name that has a lot of growth that the market is perceiving they will get. And if they mess up on earnings or something, anything can happen. But in general, that is my explanation for why the stock is where it is today. Another explanation for why the stock is where it is today, those couple of videos you just saw from Alex Karp. I really, I'm a communication guy. I love communicating. I communicate all day. This is my job, communicating on the internet and trying to galvanize people's attention and hopefully provide it in a valuable format. I think Alex Karp's energy via communication in and of itself is worth 150 billion. And I'm saying that metaphorically, but really, when you have a leader that can communicate, you get people to want to care, that want to listen, that want to pay an elevated stock price. And, if that stock dips, it is what it is. But the fact that you're getting those people into that ecosystem, I think that's very, very exciting for Palantir. So overall, those are my thoughts. I have no idea what's going to happen this week. The one thing I do think that's going to happen is on Friday, I think we're going to get into the NASDAQ. I think we will be included into the NASDAQ 100 ETF, aka the QQQ. If that does happen, is it priced in? Yeah, but is it not priced in? Maybe it's not priced in. I mean, look, I think a lot is priced in for Palantir, so the QQQ would also be priced in. But when that news hits the Bloomberg terminal and everyone sees that Palantir is now going to have another ETF that had, I think it was $300 billion assets under management and $27 billion of inflows just this year alone, up 30% year to date. Amazon, Tesla, Nvidia, Microsoft, Meta, obviously all of those Max 7s are in the queues. Palantir being a part of that is a big deal. MicroStrategy might be another one that's included in that. We'll see if that happens. But Palantir, I do think, is a lock-in to get in. I think a lot of the run we've seen has been in anticipation of front running because Palantir is going to get in. If they don't get in, could we see a little bit of a drop? Maybe. But I do think they're going to get in, and I think that's the catalyst people are waiting for coming up until the end of the week. That's probably why those $80 calls have a ton of volume as well. As Defense says right here, I think it's priced in, but it will still go up once it's added. Yeah, because remember when we went from 58 to 65 on a Friday, or it was a Thursday? That was the day that Bill Ackman announced he bought Nike and Domino's from Warren Buffett. We had so much news that day. That's when Palantir put out the PR that they're switching to the NASDAQ, and we went up 11%. Well, we're at 78 now, almost 80 from 65. So you would think if that 11% bump was the pricing in of the QQQ news, maybe it's not, right? Maybe there's a lot more. Final thing on Palantir, and then we'll move on. This is one thing for everyone who missed it on Friday. We did get a PR after hours on Friday. If you missed it, Palantir and Anduril working together. Essentially, they're creating sort of like a partnership to identify new opportunities for training in the government space and for a lack of a better word, making the government more efficient from a technological infrastructure perspective. I think there's going to be a lot of potential synergies between Doge and what the defense contractors are doing, like Palantir and Anduril, the more modern defense contractors. Palantir also had a partnership with Booz Allen Hamilton, one of the legacy government defense contractors, on Friday. So they're working with everybody. They're partnering with everybody. Everybody wants to know what Alex Karp thinks. And as a result, you get everyone thinking, hey, maybe we want to buy a little bit of Palantir. And that's why we're seeing the stock do what it's doing right now. Robinhood, $41.70 in the overnight markets. Palantir is up 2.63% at $78.35. Tesla is $398.80, not $400 yet, but it looks like it wants $400. Tesla currently $398 right now in the overnight markets. Rocket Lab does not trade overnight on Robinhood. I think anyone who has interactive brokers, you can check the price on Rocket Lab, but overnight Rocket Lab does not trade on Robinhood. Okay, cool. So that's what we got in the context of Palantir. Let's talk a little bit of Tesla. So Tesla's been pretty exciting. That Friday close up to $394 was pretty special. Tesla is now trading at the highest level, or it had its highest close since April 2022. So it's been a while since Tesla got to these levels. A couple of news updates on Tesla, and then I want to talk a little bit about what this week or what the rest of the year could hold for Tesla. So I think the first thing to understand is, number one, the robotics thesis is getting more exciting. Tesla is teasing it a lot more. Tesla's Bank of America analyst put out a note on Friday, or this was on Wednesday, basically saying, hey, we're upgrading our price target from 350 to 400. And the reasoning behind it is not because of Trump. It's not because of FSD. By the way, I tried FSD for the first time this week. Absolutely incredible. Again, it makes you wonder, why would people drive in the next 10 years? So I think more and more people like myself are recognizing the value of FSD. I'm going to be on Farzad's channel tomorrow talking about my initial skepticism about FSD and kind of how I've changed. So that'll be at 12 p.m. Eastern. We'll be talking about that. But that Bank of America analyst basically said, hey, Optimus is coming and it's not going anywhere. And if Optimus is coming, then we got to start thinking a little bit more deeply about what's going to happen in the context of this transformational ecosystem economy that's basically just in its infancy. So this is what the analyst said, just to share with everybody once again, and then we'll look at some other Tesla news. Tesla currently plans to have 1,000 Optimus robots by the end of 2025, largely in its own plant. With more robots in use, training will accelerate. Optimus accounts for only a single-digit percentage of Tesla's compute, but we expect the resources available for Optimus will grow as the robo technology matures. This will drive an acceleration in the capabilities of Optimus and ultimately lead to an increased production in 2026, thereby helping drive costs down. Elon says he wants to get it to below 30,000 to be able to build them. The Optimus opportunity and others could potentially benefit from more capital via an equity raise to fund greater compute capacity, which we believe would be welcomed by most Tesla investors. Even Bank of America saying, hey, even if Tesla had to dilute by selling shares and by raising money outside of the by just doing like an at the money offering, that would still be beneficial because it would increase their manufacturing capabilities to scale and vertically integrate Optimus. And that obviously would lead to more potential benefits, especially if they get a purchase order from someone like Walmart for thousands and thousands of robots. Raised the price target from 350 to 400 just on that news alone. So I think that is what's getting people really excited. And then you got some other headlines right here that are also pretty interesting. The Tesla Model 3 was November's fastest selling used car in the UK, taking just 14.7 days to sell on average. Tesla is getting rid of the 0% APR in the United States and North America on December 15th. So if you have your Tesla already, 0% APR, congrats. You have basically another week to be able to do that if you do want to get the 0% APR. And then there was one more piece of Tesla news I'll show in a second. Oh, this right here. XAI raised about $6 billion. Palantir's about to get to 80. All right, I'll go to that in a second. XAI raised $6 billion. That's just really important because XAI is crushing it. They're probably building the brains that will be inside of FSD, Grok, Optimus, etc. All of that beneficial for Tesla. Tesla is not invested in XAI yet, but I do think if XAI needs more money, which they probably will in the future, and Tesla throws in a couple billion, Tesla shareholders definitely won't be sad if that ends up happening. All right, where's Palantir? 78.54. So we're still a little bit away from that $80 range. Palantir right there is 78.54. Robinhood is at 41.88. We did touch 42 for a second. And then Tesla overnight is at 3.98 currently right now. So we're not at $80 left, but not at $80 yet. But it does look like we have a chance to get there overnight. Again, overnight markets doesn't really matter that much. It's nice to see, but it doesn't take place until, you really get into 9:30 tomorrow. However, if the trend is up, what I've been saying for the past couple months, because a lot of people poo-poo on Robinhood's overnight markets, 79 right now. The trend tends to follow the same into the pre-markets, even if it's not the exact numbers. So I don't know if, we're necessarily going to see the exact numbers, but if we're up 3.5% in the overnight markets, usually into pre-markets, that ends up happening. And then, when the market opens up, we have to see how the rest of the market thinks about it. So 79 right there in the context of Palantir. So overall on Tesla, XAI is raising money. The Model 3 is selling like crazy in parts of the world where the Model 3 was not selling that well, aka Europe, back a couple months ago. Like Europe registrations were just not the best. China registrations were also really good. And then we have one more piece of news right here. Tesla has the third highest owner satisfaction rating, according to a new Consumer Report study. Tesla also ranked number 2 in ownership cost, number 2 in most satisfying driving behind a Porsche, and number 2 in cabin storage. Now that I own a Tesla and I drive it every day, I can't imagine Tesla not being number 1 on these lists. I mean, it's just the coolest car to own, the most exciting experience to have. And I think the rest of the world is starting to realize that. My FSD full trial ended for full self-driving. And I'm probably not going to, buy the $8,000 FSD yet, but it kind of sucks not having it anymore in the car. And that's where the genius of Tesla is taking place, which is that they don't need to make money off the car. If they have a 90% margin on $8,000 of just pure software, which is infinitely scalable. That's why SaaS companies get a healthy premium, which is what the market's, thinking of Tesla as a SaaS company more than a car company. Yeah, they're probably going to get my $8,000 one day, and they don't care about the 45 for the car. They care about that, which they have like 17% margins on. They care about the 95% margins they have on that $8,000. So it does seem like the Tesla story is only getting better and better and better. Is it expensive here on some conventional metrics? Obviously, yeah. But it's also like, is buddy with Trump? FSD 13 is real. Optimus is not going anywhere. Energy is expanding. You're buying it for, a $10-15 trillion market cap, even though that sounds crazy for buying it at $1 trillion. And given Tesla's execution, it does seem like there's a chance to get there. So we're going to see. We're going to see kind of how that plays out. But it is pretty exciting. When are futures getting released for Robinhood? I believe by the end of this year. Index options are open on Robinhood already, so you can trade XPX, Russell, and the NASDAQ on Robinhood, along with the VIX. But futures, I think, are opening up pretty soon, along with tax lots and the realized profit and loss feature. So they have a lot of these features that have been rolled out to a majority of people, but not with everybody. And that probably will be rolled out towards the end of the year. Tesla right here, $398 currently right now. Palantir is at 79.08 cents, and Robinhood, $42.02. Robinhood up about 0.84% in the after hours. Now, Robinhood did not get into the S&P 500. The two companies that got into the S&P 500 were Workday and Apollo Global. So I don't think it's the biggest deal for Robinhood. I really think Robinhood is in its own world right now, and there is a chance that it can get a lot of momentum towards the end of the year outside of S&P 500. But if we did get in, it would have been pretty cool. And I think it'll happen in 2025. It wasn't going to happen this time, but Apollo and Workday are now in the S&P 500. And hopefully next year we have Robinhood joining into the S&P 500 as well. Also, yeah, Robinhood has this gold event tomorrow, or this like gold week promotion that they're doing. I have no idea what this is. They're calling it Gold Monday, but they said December 9th to December 16th. So that means that it's kind of like the Hood Week thing that they did back in the Miami Legend event. So it's a week of Gold Monday. I wonder what it is. I wonder if it's going to be, some type of promotion. Are they going to give you 1% to transfer your Schwab account into Robinhood? Not sure, but we're going to get some updates tomorrow on gold. And because we are now doing Robinhood Weekly that I announced today, Mondays, 9:30 p.m. Eastern, we will be talking all news in the context of Robinhood. So that's what we got. That's what we got with Robinhood. QQQ rebalance is this week. That'll be happening on Friday. Anduril news came out on Friday, so not necessarily old news, but that did come out on Friday, and it was important news after the bell, along with the Booz Allen Hamilton news that came out in the morning. And I think a lot of that news is going to be dissected over the few coming weeks. I mean, I'm not talking too much about it. I'll probably have a Daily Palantir video coming up this week about the Anduril partnership, but it's a big deal. You got two of the biggest defense contractors that are respected and that are winning contracts. I mean, Palantir is beating Raytheon for contracts. Anduril is beating Lockheed Martin for contracts. These two companies look like they are going to define the next era of American defense over the next decade. And I think that's another reason why the market's giving Palantir the premium, is because they think, hey, that government growth is not slowing down. Palantir right here, 79.25. Take a look at that. You are getting some love right here in the overnight markets. And if you think the government growth is not stopping, which is what Bank of America said, they increased their 3-year target from 24% to 29% on government growth, which, by the way, we're above Bank of America's target and Dan Ives' target. So if we get an $85 target, they might just raise it to $150, and they might just say, you know what? This is going to save us the trouble of having to upgrade it every other week. $150, let's just chill out for a little bit. And maybe that's what they end up doing. But we are above that $75 target right now for Palantir. So that government growth, I do think, is something that's going to increase, and there's probably going to be a lot more government growth in the future, and that's what investors are seeing right now as well. Can you post the link related to the car ownership satisfaction graph? Yes, I'll post that link right here in the chat. You guys can check it out right here. Okay, so we talked about Palantir, talked about Hood, talked about Tesla. Let's talk about some macro. So I'm going to do a poll right now in the chat. And I am curious what everyone's thinking by the end of the year. So second week of December, bullish or bearish by end of year? Let's see. Bullish or bearish? And then I want to read through some different data points, some charts that take a look at if we should be bullish or bearish. Because I think there's a lot of conflicting data, but I do think, in my opinion, you have more reasons to be bullish or not, but we'll talk about kind of why I see that playing out. Soundhound, does Soundhound trade overnight? Hold on, let me check. I don't think 79.58, by the way, on Palantir. Soundhound does not trade overnight. Soundhound was up 12% last week, but it does not trade overnight. 79.65. Goodness gracious. All right, if we hit 80 and I don't see it, let me know. But there is a shot. Again, low volume, but there is a chance that it could happen. Okay, so the poll is 89% bullish, 10% bearish. So 90% of you guys are bullish, 10% are bearish. All right, so let's talk about macro. Let's get into a variety of different things that are going on in the macro right now that should give us a better understanding of what's happening. First of all, Tom Lee's bullish. Tom Lee just put out a Sunday note a couple hours ago. He thinks 6,300 is coming for the S&P 500, 79.80 on Palantir. He does think that it's going to be a little choppy to get into to get into that 6,300 range, but he does think any dip is a reason you buy. And he thinks that by the end of the year, after the FOMC decision is done, which is December 18th, so put that on your calendar, December 18th, J-Powell's got to give us a cut. After that, Tom Lee thinks we probably get into that 6,300 range for the S&P 500. Now, here's one thing that maybe is bearish, maybe is bullish, but for those that didn't catch it last week, to start off our macro coverage, money market fund inflows were 95.86 billion as of last week, which is pretty wild, right? Pretty freaking wild. 79.70 currently on Palantir. $95 billion entered into the money market funds. Now, 21 billion of that 95 billion was retail. 74 billion was institutional. So retail now has 2.69 trillion on the sidelines. Institutions have 4.8 trillion on the sidelines. Bitcoin hit 100,000 for the first time this week. The SPX and the NASDAQ hit all-time highs, even though money theoretically, not necessarily, but to some extent left the markets and went on the sidelines. So my question is, why do we think money market funds are seeing all these inflows to the tune of $95 billion? Like, that's not a small amount of money, while the broader market has momentum. And I think there's kind of three quick arguments here. Number one, if you're selling your stocks and putting it into money markets and other people, because of the liquidity that currently exists, are buying those stocks, then there might not be the imbalance of, money's leaving the market and it's coming into money market funds, because money's also entering the market because people are buying stocks. So if you're selling stocks at these levels and people are buying those stocks, then it's kind of just money switching from one place to another. But that does mean more money can leave into something safer like money market funds. Number two, I think until rates come down to 3.5%, which is I think the neutral rate the Fed is thinking that they're going to get to by the end of 2025, then the risk-free return in money market funds at 4.5% is still really attractive. If you got a couple $1,000,000 in there, do you really want to take the risk of putting it into the markets versus just sitting on the couch and, getting a return and not being too afraid? So I think that's one argument. And then another argument is some people probably have money in high yield savings accounts that are lowering their APY. I think Apple just lowered it to 3.99% over the past week. And so if money market funds are giving you 4.5 or maybe 4.65, you're probably taking some of that money out of those high yield savings accounts, putting it into money market funds and getting a little bit more of the spread versus putting it into the markets until that money market fund yield comes down into the 3.5 range. I'm not sure if we're going to have a ton of money come into money markets. But what this is interesting to think about from a bull market perspective, Palantir 79.50 is that's a lot of money that's still on the sidelines. And if a lot of money continues to be on the sidelines, you get to keep making the argument, well, wait a second, it's hard to be that bearish if that much money is waiting on the sidelines and is potentially ready to deploy into the markets. How much resistance is at 80? So because this is overnight markets, we can't see any of the book order flow because there is no book order flow because it's being done overnight. So I don't know if there's any resistance at 80. I don't know how much resistance is at 80. Again, liquidity is not too strong. It's probably only 100,000 shares that have been traded, but we are up 4%. And so the people that are trading are buying Palantir currently at these levels. Frank Liu, thank you for becoming a channel member. Appreciate that, Frank Liu. Thank you for becoming a channel member. So that's the first piece of analysis in the context of the macro. We do have the money market funds that are piling up on the sidelines, and those money market funds are leading people to believe that there's more money that could be coming into the markets. Another piece of news that's really important. Take a look at this chart right here. Individual investors, aka retail investors, based on surveys, are becoming the most bullish that they've ever been. So they are the least worried about a stock market crash since 2006. 46% of U.S. individual investors believe there's a less than 10% probability of a market crash over the next 6 months, the highest share since June 2006. This percentage has doubled over the last 2 years. In other words, investors are the least worried about a stock market crash in 14 years. Obviously, we know what happened 2 years after 2006. We had the housing crisis. And this also comes as the S&P 500 has rallied 50% since it bottomed in October of 2022. Now, you could say this is pretty bullish because that means a lot of new money is coming into the markets. People are exciting. You can also say that, hey, wait a second, this is bearish because everyone thinks the market's going to go up. And, what tends to happen when everyone thinks something's going to go one way or not, you just don't usually get that type of price action. Now, granted, this is also what is the revolving trend over the past 2 years. Every single historical economic indicator, whether it's the yield curves inverting and uninverting, whether it's the Buffett indicator, which is now well beyond what it was in the year 2000 before we had a crash, or whether it's a survey on how people think about their sentiments around the broader stock market, all of them, at least in 2024 and for second half of 2023, have been proved incorrect, meaning every historical indicator that people use to say a recession is coming, this is happening, this will happen, markets will fall, it hasn't happened. And the fact that $7 trillion are on the sidelines, I mean, the real overwhelming bullish argument for all that money being on the sidelines is that it's on the sidelines. It doesn't want to participate in the market because it doesn't believe in the market. And then there you go. That's where you kind of go against the herd. If you have a lot of people that don't believe in the market, that's good because that leaves more alpha to be gained because everyone doesn't believe in one thing unilaterally happening. And I think from that perspective, does it mean this time is different? I don't know, bro, because this time has been different for the past 2 years. I mean, everyone who has been calling for a crash, Bitcoin right here, 99,827, it just hasn't happened yet. And I think on this show, we've been pretty damn objective, looking at every single bad piece of data to try to come to the conclusion on if we're going to get a crash. And the reason we just don't have that many more bad pieces of data, there are some that are out there, is because a lot of the data, like private payrolls on Friday, ended up being good. That's another reason I think we're going to get a rate cut and why the CME Fed futures probabilities went to 85% to over 75%, because the unemployment rate went up. Now, again, the unemployment rate went up slightly. It was 4.2% versus 4.1%. Some people expected 4.2%, but we only added 227,000 jobs. Now, that's more than the expected 220,000 jobs, but it was still kind of light. And as soon as this happened, this is where you saw the rate cut probability go to 85%, because what did Jay Powell say at the conference on Wednesday with the New York Times? The reason they cut in September was to make sure that there was no chance that the market would perceive the Fed as not caring about the labor market. Now, yet some Fed presidents come out on Friday and said, hey, the focus is shifting to inflation over the labor market because, we're still a little afraid that inflation is sticky, which, I think we should be a little afraid that inflation is sticky. I don't think it's going back to like 7 or 8%. But if the labor market was not as good in terms of the results that we got on Friday, which is why the rate probabilities went up for the cut in December 18th, I think that means we're going to get a cut. And the market is definitely priced for a cut. And that cut obviously will be beneficial as long as we avoid a recession. Like, we can keep cutting rates, but we have to make sure people keep having their jobs. And that's the Goldilocks zone that the Fed is trying to participate in. And I think there's a shot we get there. Also, by the way, when people say, oh, so this time is different, is like fake because this time is never different. It's one thing to remember that in 2022, we had a crash, right? We had markets fell badly. Everyone got hit. Palantir went to almost $5. So it's not like this time is different. It's more so like, hey, wait a second. We had a crash. 2021, everything got super inflated. We printed a lot of money. Valuations got ridiculous. SPACs, NFTs, all this nonsense. All of it got flushed out of the system. And so we had the meltdown that people wanted to see. It's just people thought that meltdown would continue. And it lasted a year, about 18 months, year and a half. And now the meltdown is kind of not happening because earnings growth in particular, we've covered a lot of earnings in Q3. Pretty much every company has beat on the top and the bottom line. And if they've missed, it's been a slight miss. There've been very few companies that have just had horrendous earnings, especially not companies that really mattered. That earnings growth, along with the AI thematic and boost in productivity, along with the fact that we already had a crash in 2022, is what created the optimism to get investors into this market. And that is why we're seeing something like Bitcoin, which is a risk-on asset, approach 100,000. So the question is just going to be, how long can we keep up that earnings growth? And I think we're going to keep up that earnings growth for a while. There's nothing we're seeing in the numbers that says we're not going to see earnings growth. Personal income is up. Spending is up. Retail sales are up. House sales are up, which was really surprising that went up in October by 2%. Like, people are spending, people are making more money, companies are executing, rates are coming down, which means the cost of capital gets cheaper. Oil prices, for goodness sakes, I mean, that's been a massive tailwind. Oil right here at $67. If oil stays below 70 for all of 2025, that is going to reduce so much of the input costs for the broader economy, because every single company, no matter what business they're in, they are affected by oil prices. You've got a lot of strong macro catalysts. And I think everyone's trying to find the bearish catalysts. And, I don't necessarily see it, but obviously if we do see those, then that will be something that we do have to discuss as well. Where is Palantir? Palantir is 79.38 currently in the pre-markets, or not pre-markets, overnight markets, up about 4% currently right now. Any big reports this week? Yeah, we do actually have some earnings this week, I believe. Well, let me check. Oracle is going to be the big one tomorrow after the bell. MongoDB. Oracle, MongoDB. On Tuesday, we have AutoZone, and then GameStop after the bell. And then Adobe on Wednesday. And then Costco and Broadcom, which are huge, on Thursday. And Restoration Hardware as well. So this week actually does have some decent earnings of some pretty big companies: Oracle, MongoDB, Adobe, Costco, Broadcom, etc. AutoZone's going to be interesting because used car prices have been up. So I'm curious how the used car parts or new car parts in terms of their business is doing. But those are going to be the earnings that we have this week as well. What are your thoughts on SoundHound? I don't really have any thoughts on SoundHound. I know NVIDIA invested in them. I know people are up like 4 or 5x on it. I'm happy for those people. I don't really see a broader thesis in SoundHound, but if you're in it, you're in it. Congrats. I don't really know why people are so excited about it, but people are excited about it. So I think it's really heavily driven by retail. I don't think the earnings growth is necessarily there. It's up a lot. I wouldn't be chasing at these prices, but then again, I've been wrong on SoundHound all year. So SoundHound right here at $15. The stock, again, one of those stocks that has just had a strong year with AI momentum. It's up 620% year to date. So if you believed in it at $1, $2, $3, $4, even $5, you're up a lot. I just don't know what's causing the momentum. But for those that do know, they have done very well on SoundHound. What I do know is that NVIDIA invested in them. And because they got the Jensen touch, that's what got a lot of people excited about him as well. Okay, so is there anything else in the context of macro? That's kind of the main things I wanted to touch on for macro stuff. We do have CPI this week. That's going to be important. Also, one thing on China's central bank gold reserves hit a 72 million fine troy ounces in November. So they've been buying a crap ton of gold, 160,000 ounces of gold they bought last month. Not really sure what that entails other than China's increasing their gold exposure, maybe prepping for, anything they think that could be geopolitically threatening or just a reason for why they want to get some exposure to an asset that could hedge potentially against more inflation, but they are buying gold. Now, there's a lot of stuff happening in Syria as well. I haven't done enough research on it to talk about it in a meaningful way. What we do know is Bashar al-Assad is in Russia right now. That's what most reports are saying. And he has been allegedly granted asylum by Putin after Syrian rebels took over the country. And so you've got a lot of stuff going on there. Now, the one thing I do know is that Trump put out his thoughts on this, on everything going down geopolitically. And essentially what he said right here is, we're not getting involved. So it's not having too much impact on futures or the broader market. But Trump basically said the United States should have nothing to do with it. This is not our fight. Let it play out. Do not get involved. And, this is kind of what a lot of his base voted for. A lot of his base voted for a non-interventionist policy within the Middle East. If Biden or Kamala was the president or president-elect, I do think there would be less of a, hey, let's not get involved, but hey, let's figure out what we can do to get involved. And Trump's taking the opposite direction. So time will tell, what is the right direction, but that was the update from Trump over the weekend. He does not want to get involved in anything that's going on. He did meet with Zelensky over the weekend as well, and President Macron. So you did have that happening, but outside of that, no other updates from a geopolitical perspective. Here are some pictures. He also met with the prince. So there's Trump. There you go, right there. And he got him with Macron and I think that's Joe Biden. Macron right there. And there was this funny picture where Jill and Trump are laughing together, and people are saying that she voted for Trump. So I don't know, but that's what we got over the weekend. Where's Palantir? Palantir is 79.40. Palantir, we're not at 80 yet. Palantir is at 79.40 currently right now. Okay, cool. So I think that's most of the stuff we have in the context of macro. BBAI, Big Bear AI, is not a stock that I'm interested in. I know a lot of people like it. Look, I don't think there's a lot of juice in this one. I mean, maybe this one can run. It was up 18%, probably off some headline. This one has been short squeezed so many times. I'd rather just not get involved in these names, guys. I mean, if it's part of AI, it's going to get a little pump and a catalyst because everything's getting a pump. I'd rather bet Palantir at $79. I don't fully understand these companies. And look, it's a small cap. It's under $1 billion. So if you want to take a risk on it, then take a risk. But there's no fundamental catalyst I'm seeing in a lot of these AI names, C3, Big Bear AI, that justifies a big pump. But there is heavy short interest. I think the short interest on this one is 25 to 30%. And so any little piece of news could squeeze it. We saw it get squeezed in March of 2024. I think it ran all the way to $5 from like $1. But those usually aren't the most sustainable. So no research into Big Bear AI. Palantir did have a deal with them a long time ago, but that partnership kind of went nowhere back in 2021. but no other updates from that one so far. Merple, thank you for the $10 super chat. SMCI currently is up 13%. Again, they were granted, now they're up 11%, $49 on SMCI. They were granted a extension on the NASDAQ listing for February 25th. And that's why they went up. I don't know why that, I mean, like getting an extension to file your already delayed documents, I don't know why that's a reason that sends the stock up, but because the sentiment was so bad for Supermicro and because obviously it fell from 120, people think the fair value is closer to like 70, 80 bucks. This thing got to 17. Any little bit of news or catalyst will take Supermicro higher. Not chasing that one. If you got in at 17, congrats. I do think there are some ethics issues with it. But currently right now, market's giving it a little bit more of a boost. So that's what you got going on right now. Oklo does not trade overnight in the market. SoFi currently is at 1620. There you go. SoFi up 1% as well. Not bad. SoFi right here, $16.20. Does AMD trade overnight? I think it does. AMD's up 30 bips. A lot of people are buying AMD. I'm not getting into this one. Do I think it has been sold off aggressively? Yes. Do I think it deserves to be sold off as aggressive as it's been? Probably not. But I think a lot of people are buying AMD and they have no idea why they're buying it. They're buying it because it's down relatively in a relatively significant way compared to NVIDIA. And so they're thinking, all right, how long is AMD going to take to catch up? Which is not the worst reason to buy it, but I don't think it's the best reason to buy it either. I do think there's some strong fundamentals around AMD. Don't get me wrong. I just think a lot of people are buying it because, you know, it seems like it's cheap right now, which it could be. But that is one of those stocks that is getting a bit more momentum. NVIDIA overnight. Let's check that one. By the way, I mean, what happened with Intel last week with the CEO leaving, that hasn't really helped the stock. The stock's been kind of stuck. NVIDIA down about 30 bips overnight, 141.93. Intel, it peaked at like 25.26 after the CEO resigned, quote unquote resigned. $20.90. It is down another 10 bips currently in the overnight markets. So Intel has not really had too much love from the CEO announcement. Oh, Oklo does trade overnight. My bad. Oklo's up 1.78%. It wasn't trading a couple weeks ago. Now it's trading. So there you go. Oklo is up 1.78% currently in the overnight markets. All right, let's talk about Bitcoin. Archer does not trade overnight either. Archer's 826. Archer doesn't trade overnight, but it was up 8% on Friday. Bitcoin. Let's talk about Bitcoin. So we hit under 1,000, right? Which was great. And then we hit 104,000 that same night, which was wild. And now we're at 99,651. By the way, 91% of you clicked bullish versus bearish out of 640 votes. So we have the majority of people, 91% being bullish. Now Bitcoin is below 100,000. It was above 100,000 just a couple hours ago. Some people are saying the 60 Minutes interview that came out today with Brad Garlinghouse, who is the main guy in the Ripple XRP world, is what led Bitcoin to tank. I think that's kind of weird. I don't know why Bitcoin would tank because of the 60-minute interview, but people said it did more harm than good. But basically, people were saying that it was a hit piece. And I didn't watch it. But if it was a hit piece, obviously, that's not good for Bitcoin. Now, granted, I don't think 60 Minutes is going to have the impact on Bitcoin, like the biggest impact on Bitcoin, but that might be one of the things that's happening right now. Couple updates on Bitcoin. So first of all, do you guys remember Mr. 100, who is the address, the blockchain address that has been buying not $100 of Bitcoin, 100 Bitcoin every single day for like the entire year? Well, he's back. He wasn't buying for the past month and a half. Take a look at this. He's been buying almost 300 Bitcoin a day. I mean, on December 6th, he bought 1,000 Bitcoin. I just want to know, who is this address, dude? Is this Bezos? Is this Zuckerberg? Is this the Saudis? Like this is not, this can't just be some regular guy. Like, this has to be someone very, very important, or an institution or a country that's very important. But the fact that these types of buys are happening. And again, this guy was buying 100 Bitcoin a day when Bitcoin was at 40,000, 50,000. So the fact that he continuously buys means that you're definitely seeing some sector of the market that obviously has access to a ton of capital that believe Bitcoin is indeed going higher. And you also have them putting their money where their mouth is, buying at these levels, 100,000, 95,000, 94,000, wherever it may be. It's Saylor. You know, I don't know if Saylor has that much cash. Saylor, I don't know how liquid Saylor is. Most of his net worth is in MicroStrategy. I know he sold a lot of shares, but I don't think he has that much liquid cash to be buying this much Bitcoin. I do think it's the Saudis. That's my guess. I think it's the Saudis. Or it could be Putin. Yes. Or it could be Putin. Oh, but Putin also said over the weekend in an interview that Bitcoin can't be stopped. So that was another, not endorsement, I guess, but kind of pseudo argument made by Putin. Here's where it was right here. This is what Putin said when he was asked who can stop Bitcoin.
Биткоин. Кто может запретить?
Do you guys hear this? Hold on. Do you guys hear this? 1 second. For some reason I don't hear it. Okay, this is why. Okay, it should be good now.
Биткоин. Кто может запретить? Никто. А использование других электронных средств расчета. Кто может запретить? Никто, потому что это новые технологии. И чего бы ни было, чего бы ни происходило с долларом, эти инструменты так или иначе будут развиваться, потому что все будут стремиться к тому, чтобы снижать издержки и повышать надежность.
So even Putin is just like, yeah, these are new technologies. We're not stopping them. They're not going anywhere, right? And so you're getting a lot of people that still believe that, as Jonathan says right here, nothing stops this train. I don't think Steve is the one buying Bitcoin. Maybe it is. Maybe Steve is not being honest with us in terms of his net worth. But if he's Mr. 100, then I don't know why he's crying so much about his Palantir covered calls, because he could have paid to get out of them a lot earlier. But that's what we got in the context of Putin. Now, Saylor did tweet today. Folks, don't be surprised tomorrow if we get another Michael Saylor MicroStrategy purchase, because you got your boy Saylor who tweeted a couple hours ago, still too much blue on SaylorTracker.com. Blue is the price of Bitcoin. Green on SaylorTracker.com is the number of times MicroStrategy has bought Bitcoin over the past 5 years. And the last time he tweeted this, last week on Sunday, Monday, he ended up buying more Bitcoin. So it looks like they're going to sell some more shares and they're going to buy some more Bitcoin. I mean, Michael Saylor is making sure that this party continues and that we normalize 100,000. I think the biggest thing that Saylor wants to do right now is normalize 100,000, because, you don't want to get to 100,000 and then have that tank. He wants that to be stable. He wants that to be secure. And in order to do that, you got to have people buying it. Same thing with Robin. I mean, people were asking, okay, Amit, is Robinhood to look at? I'm going to be buying it at $40, 41. Yeah. Because the valuation to me with $5 billion in cash, $36 billion or $31 billion enterprise value, market cap is $36 billion. It's relatively cheap compared to the growth that they're pursuing. Now, when we get into the $50, $60 range, if that happens, maybe I'll say, all right, like now this is getting in. But $31 billion for Robinhood, growing at what they're going to show in Q4 is going to be much higher than 40%, in my opinion, is cheap, along with the fact that they're buying back their shares. And we saw all the verticals they're expanding to, all the growth opportunities in 2025. So the point is, I'm happy normalizing the process of buying Robinhood at 40 because I want more shares. I bought it I remember the day I was in India, the day we got to 25. And that was kind of that was that like price that everyone was waiting for, $25. I was waiting for 25 because I have some options with a strike of 25. So I wanted to see 25, but also 25 was like, all right, we're not in the low 20s anymore. We're hopefully transitioning into the late 20s. And then maybe we can make our way into the 30s. The day they announced the investor day, we spiked above 25. I think it was 25.18 and I bought 50 shares. And I posted the screenshot and everyone was like, why are you buying the top? Why are you buying it's just run? It's like, nope, I'm buying into strength. I made the mistake on Palantir, not making the mistake here, especially when the valuation on this is totally different. And obviously the growth is very strong. And then I bought at 35, I bought at 33, I bought at 37 the other day because there's not really that much of a difference between 35 and 37. We were down from $39. I'll be buying at 41. The point is, I'm going to be normalizing the process of buying Robinhood for myself at these levels. And I think Saylor's trying to normalize buying Bitcoin at 100,000. And quite frankly, if you normalize Bitcoin at 100,000 and IBIT, which would equate to basically $60, $58 at 100,000, you're going to get a lot of people just say, all right, fine, it's $100,000. Gold is worth 17 trillion. People are still buying gold. Do you believe Bitcoin one day could become digital gold? Okay, right now it's at 2 trillion. Maybe it has another 10 trillion to get. I'm going to be buying it at 100,000. That is what, Saylor is really hoping for. And a lot of the Bitcoin bulls are hoping for. And if that can happen, then we're going to get to see a lot more momentum coming into Bitcoin. Marathon overnight, let's check them. We haven't checked them. Marathon overnight is down 1%. MicroStrategy overnight is at 391. They were down about 0.78%. Palantir overnight is 79.30, 79.27. They were up 3.84%. currently overnight. Now, the Olin podcast had a little bit of a critique about what MicroStrategy is doing. Let's listen to that. This was about 3 minutes. Here's what they had to say about MicroStrategy's strategy.
Let's talk about a very important public market set of transactions. Gavin, I'd like your point of view on Michael Saylor's convertible note issuances being used to buy Bitcoin.
Coming over the top.
Which this morning, Bloomberg reported is the hottest trade in hedge funds right now. Wow. Nick, if you could pull up the article. And then JCal, I know you've been an outspoken opinion setter on Michael Saylor's promotion of his securities actions. We'd love your point of view, Gavin.
I would just say at some point, this does get too big. For a while, when it was smaller, you could support the debt.
And sorry, could you explain it? Could you explain it to everyone, Gavin?
Yeah. So what he is doing is issuing debt and buying Bitcoin with the premise that Bitcoin is always going to go up. And he, has made eloquent arguments why that is the case. No trees grow to the sky. And I think the interest expense on his convertible notes is $75 million off the top of my head. And by the way, I could care less about MicroStrategy. Like, I'm not close to it. I'm not involved.
Yeah.
I don't know any hedge funds who own it.
No horse in the race.
Yeah. I think a lot of hedge funds are short MicroStrategy, but I have no horse in the race. But the underlying business that pays the interest expense on the debt only does $400 million a year in revenue, and it's high gross margin revenue. But unless debt investors have absolute confidence, and I don't think that's where fixed income markets are yet, it will get to a point where it is too big for the size of his company. And then, maybe he can over collateralize it and, have $10 in Bitcoin for every dollar of debt. But then, like the magic money creation machine that, I see discussed on X breaks down, because that's that's very, very different than what is being discussed today.
Okay, so that was their analysis on Bitcoin or MicroStrategy. To be honest, I think it was very elementary analysis. I don't really think they did a good job actually explaining kind of why they're upset with Bitcoin. It's a lot of just, complaining on the context of like what he's doing. I think you need to have a creative mind to understand what's going on with MicroStrategy. And like, you could say he's levering up too much. You could say the premium's too much, all that good stuff. But I think this is where an understanding of options makes a lot of sense. Like, the derivatives market that is being opened up for selling calls, selling puts, selling the volatility, buying options, buying puts, shorting, going long, all of that, the market is saying is valuable because it is the only market that exists with the leverage and alpha that MicroStrategy stock has because of this unique way of collateralizing basically $40 billion worth of Bitcoin to be able to achieve. That creates the volatility that's exciting for options traders to get into it. Now, the classic definition of that, or the classic response to that, is, wait a second, so the only reason it's exciting is because it's going up, right? And I think Michael Saylor was on a podcast this week, and I think it was really interesting because, someone said, wait, so the only reason, MicroStrategy even matters is because Bitcoin's going up. So the only reason people are interested in MicroStrategy and the options, the derivatives on MSTR, which creates the premium that it's getting, is because Bitcoin goes up. So how can you justify buying or engaging in an asset that is only exciting because it's connected to another asset that's going up? And Saylor, I think, had a really good response, quite frankly. And I think the interviewer was caught off guard, which is, wait a second, are we not going to ask why it's going up? Right? Why is it going up? Because if we're building a Bitcoin treasury ecosystem on top of the asset that's going up via collateralizing MicroStrategy stock in a very unique way with convertible debt, you may say that's not valuable, but then I have to ask you, why isn't it valuable to do that if the underlying asset is going up for a lot of reasons, if you get into the Bitcoin thesis, and then MSTR just becomes a proxy on that the market obviously feels is valuable. Here's Saylor kind of talking about this idea around why Bitcoin is interesting.
Well, why is this thing going to remain interesting? We can talk about the volatility, we can talk about the financial dynamics and the technicals of Bitcoin, but why do I care about Bitcoin? What's actually interesting about it other than the price going up?
It's a good question, but I actually think that if you want to spend a few hours or studying it or researching it, you'll find that it is the most interesting thing in the world. I mean, I don't even think it's debatable. I don't think there is a second most interesting thing. The most interesting financial asset, the most interesting asset in the world by far is
So
Bitcoin.
why is it so
Oh,
interesting?
what would you guys say to that? Put it in the comments. What or in the chat? Is that right? Would you agree with that? Even if you're not a fan of Michael Saylor, like, is Bitcoin the most interesting financial asset on the planet?
Interesting to you personally, from a personal level, when you learned about Bitcoin, started studying it?
Wasn't the more important question, why is it interesting to everybody else on the earth?
Sure.
Right? There's 650 million crypto people. It's the center of 650 million crypto people. There's 1,500 crypto exchanges you can trade it on. Any company on earth can trade with any other company with Bitcoin. It's on Saturday afternoon, if you wanted $1 billion of credit, it's the only place to get $1 billion of credit. If you wanted to panic sell or take $1 billion short position because of an Israeli missile crisis, it's the only thing you can sell $1 billion of. And on Sunday morning, if you want to reverse the trade, it's the only way to reverse the trade, right? NVIDIA is not trading on Saturday. I mean, think about by the way, Bitcoin is the 7th biggest asset in the world by market cap. It's $2 trillion. But think about the ones above it. Microsoft, Apple, right? NVIDIA.
Yep.
These are not useful or interesting to most of the world. No Chinese company is going to capitalize on NVIDIA stock. Gold's at the top. You can't move $10 billion of gold from New York to Tokyo or short it or go long. So literally what I do is turn it around to you and say, if you don't think it's the most interesting, tell me what asset in the world is more interesting right now to more people, because I don't think you can name one.
Well, I think it's interesting because of all of the conversations that it sparked and the way that it's become very political, and it really brings out the emotions of everyone involved, either positive or negative. But the things that you mentioned there about why it's interesting, like, again, a lot of it has to do, I mean, you mentioned the fact that it trades on weekends, which other assets don't, but the idea that it is.
Ed, come on. First of all, the number one performing stock in the S&P 500, mine.
Yeah.
We're up 30x.
Yeah.
That's 3 times more than NVIDIA. That's interesting. How about the number one options market in the S&P 500? Mine. We have the most intense options, like 130% of market cap. The most profitable convertible bond, the number one convertible bonds in the marketplace, MicroStrategies.
Yeah.
Right? It's interesting because people are making money off of it.
Right.
Everybody in the world. $2 trillion of market cap or of wealth has been created in 48 months for hundreds of millions of people. It's changing every minute of the day.
But in that sense, isn't what's interesting that the price is going up? Because you said, it's nice when the price goes up. But what I'm also hearing is the interesting part is the price going up, the fact that it has become such a valuable asset class. And I guess my point would be, if there comes a time when the price starts going down, suddenly it's not so interesting anymore. And then I feel that it could all of that fire that you described can sort of poof a lot more quickly.
By the way, it was pretty interesting when it went down too. I give you the crypto winner. It's interesting because it's useful. It's useful because it's the hardest money in the history of the human race, right? It's interesting and useful because it represents property rights and monetary security or economic security for 8 billion people. It's interesting in the same way that electricity and clean water and steel and airplanes and fire and nuclear power are interesting, because it's the single biggest way to improve your quality of life, right? And
I think Saylor's right on this. So I think the interviewer necessarily didn't get him on that one. Some people may feel differently here, but Look, it's a logical argument to say, oh, it's only interesting because it's going up, right? And I think that's like a decent gotcha moment. But I think Saylor's response right here, and again, if you spoke to people who live in nations where they don't have an economic or monetary system, they are not banked, they can't go to a bank. If they try to go next to an ATM, they're going to get stabbed if they get any cash that comes out. Like places that are much less privileged than Europe and the United States and Canada that have easy access to economic mobility. Bitcoin's very interesting for them, because they're able to digitally transact and actually use Bitcoin, or just like cryptocurrencies in general, as a way to communicate and express themselves. And that is something that we in the West, I think, take for granted, because we don't necessarily need to use Bitcoin because we have a monetary system that, for the most part, actually works. So I think that is a good response. And I think the argument that Bitcoin going up is not just like, oh, GameStop goes up, therefore it's interesting. But Bitcoin's going up because it is antithetical, or the logical reason for why a lot of people think it's going up is because it's a refutation of money printing. And it's very interesting how much money we've printed, how much debt we're in, and how we've allowed ourselves to have a debasement of the currency, being the world's richest nation, world's most valuable nation, world's biggest military. But still, we have not been able to get our monetary or fiscal policy under control. Why are people giving $2 trillion of value to something that is useless theoretically? Well, maybe it's not useless, and maybe it's a refutation against everything that we think is useful. And so I think that right there, and then the stats he throws out, right? There's 650 million different, or 650,000 different exchanges you can buy it on. There's hundreds of millions of people every day transacting with it. You got Coinbase that has become this global exchange that is based upon the idea of offering more Bitcoin to people. You've got all these different exchanges from 2011 that were just popping up. You have the best performing asset of all time. Like, it's not just the best performing asset, therefore it's interesting. Why is it the best performing asset? And the reason it's the best performing asset gets into all the geopolitical and monetary and economic implications of why Bitcoin tends to go up. So I think when you think of it from that perspective, you could also think of it as a pyramid scheme. That's one way to think of it. But when you think of it from that perspective, I think it makes Bitcoin one of, if not the most interesting financial instruments of our lifetimes, until something else more interesting pops up. And one thing I saw Saylor say on an interview, Bitcoin right here at 99,500, is that when he dies, he wants to make sure that MicroStrategy and his, well, I don't think he can do it from MicroStrategy, but his personal Bitcoin is never sold. And it was actually a hell of an argument. He said that will be my gift to humanity, right? Just like Satoshi is like never going to sell his Bitcoin because we don't know who he is. Same thing with Saylor. He says he's going to make sure his Bitcoin is locked up so he never sells it. And that is a gift to humanity, because that creates the finite nature of Bitcoin to still be finite. And if there's only 21 million of them, and maybe Saylor has a couple 100,000, and those never get sold, and there is some value in the asset in and of itself, well, the price logically will have to go higher, right? Until everyone thinks that it's full of shit and that Bitcoin is not valuable. But so far, that's not the case, and maybe that will never be the case. So that's what you got in the context of Bitcoin. That's why I think we're seeing Bitcoin at 100,000. Again, some people disagree, some people may agree, but I do think that interview, that back and forth, was a good kind of intellectual debate to kind of think of Bitcoin as one of the most interesting financial assets in the world. On top of that, last thing here on Bitcoin, Amazon shareholders have requested the board of directors to do what they requested Microsoft to do, which is explore and determine if adding Bitcoin to the company's treasury is in the best long-term interest of shareholders. So I think in the next coming weeks, we are going to probably get a pitch either by Saylor or by someone who's a shareholder of Amazon that wants them to explore the process of putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet. And if you get an Amazon that bites the dust, or maybe a Meta, maybe a Microsoft, maybe an Apple, I don't think it'll be Microsoft and Amazon. I really think it's going to be Meta or Amazon, in my opinion. All right, so you put it in the chat. If you had to pick one Mag 7 outside of Tesla, because they already did it, that would put Bitcoin on their balance sheet, which one would it be? I think it's Meta. I think Zucks is forward-looking. I think Zucks wants to be part of the new revolution. By the way, Zucks did say they have 600 million people using Meta AI every month, and they have their new Llama open source version that has been downloaded hundreds of millions of times. So he gave those 2 updates on Friday. But I think Zucks would do it. I don't think Jassy would do it. I definitely don't think Nadella would do it. Tim Cook is not even going to touch it. Sundar is not going to buy Bitcoin. And then who's left? Elon already did it. What's the other one that I'm forgetting? NVIDIA. Oh, Jensen. I don't think Jensen would be opposed to it because GPUs were used for crypto mining, to be honest. For that was one of their biggest use cases in 2021. I think Jensen's just a little not worried, but just like he's trying to make sure the stock is in a good position. And in order to do that, you need to keep up the growth, especially when you're already viewed as such a cyclical company. And a lot of people still don't believe in the AI revolution. I think he wants to make sure that they don't do anything to mess that up. And putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet would just create a lot of noise, I think, instead. So I don't think he would necessarily do that. I think it's Zucks. I think Zucks would do it. Now, granted, how much would they do? I don't know, but I think Zucks could get away with it somehow to do it. Benioff should buy it and use it as currency for Salesforce agents. Oh my God, that'd be hilarious, bro. Yeah, most of you guys are saying Meta as well. Most of you are saying Meta. I would agree. Yeah, I think it would probably be Meta. So that's what we got in the context of Bitcoin. Again, the Amazon thing is interesting. I don't know if Saylor's going to be the one pitching it to them, but it does look like we are going to be getting a pitch by someone to Amazon's board of directors. I think Jassy's going to listen to it. Andy Jassy's a smart guy. I think he's going to. Also, I think Bezos likes Bitcoin. He probably won't say it publicly, but I think he does. Bezos did say on the New York Times conference on Wednesday that he's actively working at Amazon every day. Like he says he gets bored and he actually still works at Amazon. So I don't know. Maybe Bezos hears the pitch as well, and maybe he thinks that it's worth pursuing. Here's Bezos actually saying that he still works at Amazon.
What is it that you're doing at Amazon?
AI. Yeah. So I mean, there are a few things, but small thing, but it's 95% AI.
And where do you think
it's just so because we are literally working on 1,000 applications internally. So AI, you have to remember, modern AI is a horizontal enabling layer. It can be used to improve everything. It will be in everything. This is most like electricity. These kind of horizontal layers, like electricity and compute, and now artificial intelligence, they go everywhere. I guarantee you there is not a single application that you can think of that is not going to be made better by AI.
So Bezos saying that they're working so deeply on AI also makes a lot of people think that he is not letting this AI revolution, and he's one of the best entrepreneurs ever. He would never let this AI revolution go without him playing an active role in it. And even if he's not the CEO of Amazon, I imagine that he thinks there is a pretty active role to be had in looking at the progress for what could happen with AI. A couple things I want to show, and then I will get you guys out of here. We're coming up on an hour and 20 minutes. These are supposed to be 45 minutes, but obviously I can't stop talking. First of all, SoFi, Palantir, Tesla, let's do a check on them real quick in the overnight markets. Tesla is up. Tesla's green. Tesla, we got 398.44. Up about 2.3%. Palantir 79.25, up 3.8%. And you got SoFi right here is up 16.13. And then you got Hood right here is up above $42 exactly, 0.79% up currently in the not the pre-markets, the overnight markets. Nvidia, real quick, let's look at them. Nvidia is at 141.84. So the semis kind of taking a little bit of a hit. They did recover this week, but semis so far are down in the overnight markets. Okay, a couple other headlines. So this thing that I wanted to show right here. Oh, Schwab. So Schwab's analyst, again, this is Schwab, right? Schwab says Bitcoin, they think, could hit 500,000 to 1 million with government adoption of the strategic Bitcoin reserve. And they said if you don't have at least 10% of your portfolio in Bitcoin, you risk falling behind. So a Schwab spokesperson, they have these like market analysts that represent the firms. They went on TV and they said, hey, we think Bitcoin is something you should have a little bit of exposure to, which is interesting because, again, Schwab has not been on the cutting edge of like all this Bitcoin stuff, but it seems like that's happening. And here's another thing that's really interesting. US spot Bitcoin ETFs now have more Bitcoin than Satoshi Nakamoto. So spot ETFs have 1.1 million. Nakamoto has 1.1 million. They have a little bit more than 1.1 million for the spot ETFs. Binance has 633,000. The US government has 198,000. The Chinese government, I didn't know that. They have 194,000. MicroStrategy has 400,000. Robinhood, they don't really own 142,000. Robinhood's like custodying 142,000 Bitcoin, but they don't really own it. Block has 164,000. Kraken 158,000. And then Bitfinex 184,000. The Bitcoin ETFs are starting to eat up a lot of the supply. Only 450 of those Bitcoin, again, are mined every single day. So that is another update going back to this kind of argument on what we're seeing with Bitcoin. Now, so transitioning off of Bitcoin, last couple of headlines I want to show as well. Elon Musk is getting continuously upset at OpenAI, and he's thinking that there's a good shot that OpenAI is not going to have the best situation over the next couple of years. David Sachs, now the AI czar, David Sachs does not like OpenAI. He does like Elon Musk. He's best friends with Elon Musk. Here was a headline from Friday. OpenAI seeks to unlock investment by ditching the AGI clause with Microsoft. The startup discusses removing provision to protect powerful technology from being misused from commercial purposes. AKA, what this means is investors are saying, hey, we'll give you more money, but you have to get rid of this whole, we're going to be super safe with our AGI, because obviously the business applications of being super case are limited, and our ROI at investing is also going to be limited. So get rid of all the safety stuff. Elon quote tweets that, and he says, was it ever not a lie? I am not comfortable with OpenAI at all, because Elon's been right so far on one major thing, which is that Sam Altman basically stole OpenAI right from under his feet. First, that was the first thing he was right on. The second thing is he turned it into a profit when he said that would never happen. Remember, Elon wanted this to be a hedge against Google. That's why they created. If Elon wanted to invest in an AI company, he would have invested. He gave a $40 million donation to OpenAI because he thought it was a nonprofit. So in reality, Elon should own a significant chunk of it, but he doesn't. So he was right about that. And then third, he was right about the fact that OpenAI is not going to be safe. Why did Ilya, OpenAI's co-founder, leave and start another company called Super Safe Intelligence? That's literally the name of the company. They raised $1 billion. Maybe because he doesn't think Sam Altman's going to be safe. And then you got this report from the Financial Times saying that OpenAI is seriously considering getting rid of the AGI safety protection clause to raise more money, showing that they are willing to sacrifice ethics and values around safe AI integrations for more capital. So, I mean, look, I still think OpenAI's model is better than all the other models, but I've been using Grok more. I've been using Meta's Llama more. There's the Claude is heating up for a lot of people in the enterprise. There is a big argument that the LLM is a commodity. This $150 billion market cap makes zero sense for OpenAI, especially if Sam Altman can't guarantee any level of profitability, any level of safeness, any level of actual advanced growth if all the LLMs start competing with each other and the returns are diminishing. And then, you got something like Palantir that's valued at this point now above OpenAI at $174 billion, maybe because the market's thinking that the LLM, which Palantir integrates with all of them, is not going to matter. What's going to matter is the use cases of actually making those LLMs operational. And that's where you land up on Palantir. So I think we've got a lot of dynamics going on in the AI marketplace. And over the next few years, we're going to see a lot of competition and battling going back and forth. XAI raising $6 billion because XAI thinks that they have a way better opportunity than OpenAI, A, to achieve AGI, B, to be the brains behind Grok, Twitter, which is now X, Optimus, FSD, etc., and also potentially doing it in a way that actually is safe versus Sam Altman sacrificing safety for capital. So that's what we're going to have to see. That's what we're going to have to see for AI and OpenAI. When is NVIDIA going to 250? Steve actually thinks by next year there's a shot. Maybe not 250, maybe closer to 200, 225. But Steve is buying NVIDIA 140 on the Friday market close. We talked about his new article on Seeking Alpha discussing why NVIDIA is a buy at these levels. And when Zucks puts $14 billion into one state, Louisiana, to build a data center, it starts to make you think, wait a second. These guys are not stopping the spend on CapEx. And the big news on NVIDIA, which I think took it from 130 to 145 last week, is that the next generation production above Blackwell is starting 6 months earlier than expected. And so that was really positive for TSM and NVIDIA, because that means that they're going to get ahead on the next generation chip that should release in early 2025. Gerald, thank you for the $5 super chat. Hey, Amit, thanks for everything you do. Once again, what do you think about Big Bear AI? Do you know anything about the company? I answered that a little bit earlier in the stream. Don't know anything about Big Bear AI. I do know they have a big short float. I personally would stay away from it. I'm not investing in it. I don't think there's a really big AI moat. Could the stock go up? Yes, because there's a lot of short interest and a lot of people are chasing. This thing has squeezed many times in the past, especially in 2023. I personally am not investing in it, but if you're in it, just know that it's going to be highly volatile and it could be a squeeze that's causing a lot of this right now. To my understanding, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, DM me on Twitter, send me anything. I didn't see any fundamental update on big. I don't see any big contract or anything like that. It's kind of more so just AI and then short float and ends up squeezing as people buy it up. ChatGPT Pro is now $200 a month. Yes. So that's another thing, Sam Altman's saying, hey, let's charge $200 a month for this thing. Look, I think some people will pay it because at the end of the day, if it really is like that good, like for example, like coding, then why would you pay an engineer $200,000 when you can pay $2,400 for a ChatGPT coder, right? The problem is, I don't think the majority of people will pay $200 a month. And if people are not going to pay $200 a month, then the business model to me is like, where's the money coming from? It's not going to be like they have the biggest API call market in AI, but that's not enough to cover the cost for training the models. The $20 a month that I pay in my subscription is not enough. They have 300 million weekly active users, which is amazing, but I would imagine a lot of them are not paying for $20 a month, and even if some of them are, that's not enough to cover the expenses. They are not in the enterprise where BP is giving them $100 million. So where are they going to get the money? They might have to go down the route of advertising or charge an insane $200 subscription. But if no one's going to pay the $200 subscription, or people are just not going to pay, not enough people are going to pay that, they're going to have to go down the advertising route. And that to me is bullish Google, because Google's already doing AI with a mixture of advertising. So if ChatGPT does it, it's probably going to be a shittier experience, which means at that point, I think advertisers just go to Google. So I'm kind of like, I don't want to say I'm bearish OpenAI right now, but I kind of don't get it. I don't get it. If all the models are doing the same thing and the switching costs of using Grok over OpenAI is not that different. Like I used both this week for a certain task, and I was just like, this is relatively the same. And then you got Amazon pumping billions into Anthropic, building their models. And you got people maybe paying $200 a month. Like, where's the moat? Like, seriously, where's the moat here? And I think that's what Sam Altman's gonna have to figure out over the coming weeks. All right, final thing I want to watch, and then I will get you guys out of here because I've been keeping you guys hostage, is the Tesla upgrade. So that same analyst that upgraded them to $400, he explained why he upgraded them to $400. Just want to take one last look at this, and then we will end out for the week. We got a big week coming up. We have CPI, PPI, after CPI, and PPI. December 18th, we will have hopefully a rate cut. So this CPI is going to be really important. If it's too hot, maybe we don't get a rate cut. If it's cold, then we hopefully do. If it's in line with expectations, we hopefully do as well. But this is going to be a very important week for the macro and to see if things play out the way that they hopefully should play out. Maybe pull up this video right here. Just had it saved. Bank of America, Tesla. And we will watch that. Okay, here it is right here. So here is why we're looking at 400 on Bank of America, or on Tesla.
Questions did you principally want to have clarified by going down to visit the facility, and what left you more optimistic?
Great. Well, thanks for having me. I'm an old school gearhead. I've been doing this for over 25 years. I love seeing factories. So that was the first thing, really, to see the Austin facility for the first time. So that was great. Seems like it's a really good facility. But I guess probably more important than that was our test drives of FSD in a Model Y. I was in version 13.2, and it was incredibly good through some very challenging scenarios. So that was incredibly impressive. And then the potential for FSD to continue to grow as a percent or a penetration rate to continue to grow over time, which will create recurring profit and revenue streams off these vehicles, which will be far higher than the initial hardware sales. And I think that really is where we got pretty optimistic about what can happen here. And our $400 price objective, our updated one, is the first stop. We'll see how this ultimately goes over time and how things are executed over the next year or two.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, it's added like $500 billion in market cap in a matter of a few months. And so the big question there is, the pacing of whatever financial benefit is going to be coming through whether it's full self-driving and the robo-taxi business, and then also just actual here and now demand for EVs?
So I guess there'd be three things I'd point to. First, the launch of the low-cost vehicle next year. That's going to be very important to get out there. The market opens up very significantly in the U.S. and globally, sub $40,000. So that vehicle coming out sub $40,000 is going to be very important. And hopefully that'll be X the $7,500 IRA credit, which is at risk. I think the other two things that are really important is that the potential for Optimus and FSD, or full autonomy, to really take off are important. And when you kind of sort of dare to dream, like a lot of the growth investors in this name do, I mean, you got a $100 trillion global GDP number, 50% of that is labor, right? So that's the TAM for Optimus. You know, how much of that it actually takes or adds to is huge. And then on the FSD side, you have about 10 trillion miles driven each year on the roads around the world. You know, if you capture 50 cents or a dollar on each of those miles, your potential profit is tremendous. So I think, you know, as you look at the two vectors that they're going on Optimus on the labor side and FSD on the autonomous side, there's really huge opportunities. And then just one last real thing, the speed of travel has not changed in the better part of the last 80 years. If you're in an autonomous vehicle that can't hit something, there's the potential for the speed of travel to go up significantly. And then all of a sudden you have structural economic growth like the US and the developed markets have not seen for more than 50 years.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you're correct to mention just sort of the dare to dream aspect of you know, that's what this investor base is when it gets excited when the stock goes up. Those are the things that come into play. You do also raise the notion, though, that it has an incredibly low cost of capital based on, you know, the stock trading at 100 times earnings. Do you actually think that they might be looking to raise more?
Well, I mean, growth investors are involved here, and they want to continue the company to continue to push the growth envelope on the top line. So raising 5% of the equity, which would be about $55 billion right now, would accelerate sort of the deployment of what they're doing on the Dojo side, as far as the systems that are necessary for AI on full self-driving and for Optimus. And the reality there is, I don't think anybody would really bat an eye at a 5% dilution. That would be the largest capital raise in history, by the way, but really not that big a deal for a company with a 1.1 to 1.2 trillion dollar market cap.
So there you go. All the analysts are like, you know what? At 170, we hated it. Elon was the worst person ever. He was being too political. But at 400, we're going to raise the price target to 400. And that's what happens, folks. And so now you got Tesla here getting all the praises from all of the analysts. It's exciting, bro. It's very, very exciting. If you've been in Tesla, if you bought the dip this year, congratulations. You deserve it. I would say it was the most hated stock until Elon got the compensation package. And then, Elon last week got the compensation package rejected. Still, no one cares, right? People are, like, the fact that Elon got the compensation package rejected and people are still buying the stock just proves to you they don't care anymore. They just want exposure, and they believe that Tesla is going to continue to be gaining momentum over the next few years. All right, there we go. That's it. Chadwick says, I love the Kentucky sweatshirt. I live in Lexington. I love it. I've been to Lexington a couple times. Awesome, awesome place. Thank you guys for being here. That's it for me today. We'll be back tomorrow morning, 8:45 a.m. Eastern Standard on the market open. First week of December was strong. Let's see what we have for the second week of December, particularly with CPI and PPI data. And then after that inflation data, we will have updates on if we're getting a rate cut. And then after the rate cut, that's it for the end of the year. We have a couple earnings this week, and then we're pretty much done. Then we head off into 2025, which is wild, right? Like, actually wild that we have a couple weeks left of 2024. It's a wild, wild year, but it's been a cool year. And now we are ending it out in 2025, or in 2024, going into 2025. And that's it. All right, that's it. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Again, one announcement I made today. Hood Weekly is officially starting on the channel. Mondays with Tanner and Roy. We're probably going to get a ton of other guests throughout the week. Going to start really building out this community, a dedicated space to have this. Hopefully is the podcast. Episode 1 tomorrow, we'll be recapping their investor day, 9:30 p.m. So for those that are really junkies for Robinhood, want to get more Robinhood coverage, every Monday, 9:30 to 10:30, we'll be talking about it. And I got to make it fun. So it'll be a fun one, because Tanner and Roy, I love them, but they're a little rigid, right? And they know, I've told Tanner this all the time when I was doing SoFi Weekly with Tanner. I was like, Tanner, like loosen up, bro. Like we're on a podcast. So I'm just gonna love like poking Tanner here and there, because he's a guy that can be like, a little annoyed at certain things here and there and like make little jokes, but it'll be fun. I think it'll be a fun dynamic. Roy is awesome. Roy just understands the world so well. Roy's probably gonna be the calm one on these episodes, and it'll be cool. We'll get a ton of guests, and hopefully we'll make this podcast really fun for everybody. Last quick check on the overnight markets. Palantir is $79.42. Robinhood is at $42.15. Tesla is at $397.69. SoFi is at $16.15. Nvidia $141.98, and then Palantir right here $79.42 currently in the overnight markets. All right, that's it. Thank you, everybody. We'll be back on the market open tomorrow, 8:45 a.m. I'll see you then. Have a beautiful night of sleep. Sweet dreams. Hopefully you enjoy your dreams. And we'll be back in about 15 hours to discuss the markets, because we have to keep discussing the markets. All right, everybody. Have a good one. Good night. Have a good one. Bye, everyone. See you tomorrow.